I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She is a New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestselling author, speaker, trainer, and many more. No other than Miss Bridget Cook-Burch. Welcome to Book 101, Miss Bridget, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, Daniel. So happy to be here. You mentioned the New York Times and Wall Street Journal, but I have utilized my experiences in writing many books to be able to help other people to write their books. And so I do some ghostwriting, I do some co-authoring, and I also love to mentor people who are writing books to actually, have a soul to their story, especially now in the age of AI that can make some parts easier. But it's so important that our soul be in the story. And excited to talk to you about the book we're going to talk about today because it is all about soul.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
yep.
indeed. So today let's talk about Divine Turbulence. Can you tell us about this book, Miss
Yes.
Bridget?
So I co-authored this with Gary Lee Price. He's a world-renowned sculptor, but he didn't begin that way. Gary went on quite a journey from the time he was a little boy. He was being raised on an army base in Mannheim, Germany, and he was there with his mother and his stepfather, having just a normal childhood full of a lot of joy, art on his mother's lap, etc. But then one night was a terrible night, and his stepfather took his mother's life right in front of Gary, and then also killed himself. And so Gary and his little baby brother were sent back from the frying pan into this fiery den of abuse. His little brother was sent to live with his grandparents, and Gary was sent to live with his father, who was a gentleman and a kind person. However, he was married to a woman who had a son who was several years older than Gary, and both adults were working nights. And what they didn't know was that while they were gone, he was subjecting Gary to all kinds of torture and abuse. But the book doesn't focus on all of that. It explains those things that Gary had to go through. But what was incredible was how Gary found art and how he found faith to be able to do some really incredible things in the world, to finally get to the point where he was commissioned by Stephen Covey to create a statue of responsibility that Dr. Viktor Frankl had this vision and dream when he would come to the United States, and he saw that we often took our freedom for granted, like they once had in Vienna. And he said, in the United States, you need to have a statue of responsibility somewhere in the West to bookend the Statue of Liberty in the East, because you cannot have liberty without responsibility. And Gary really had to grow from being this, abused child to actually becoming a world-renowned sculptor. And so the book focuses on that incredible journey of how we can all actually become better through the divine turbulence that we face in life.
Yes, yes, indeed. And thank you so much for bringing this book to the world. And Miss Bridget, Gary's journey is described as one of overcoming unthinkable evil to become better instead of bitter. What do you take away from this theme?
Well, it's interesting because Gary and I were working on this in the middle of COVID. And if you remember, globally, worldwide, so many people were struggling.
Yeah.
There was such this sense of hopelessness, and people felt like their whole lives were shattered, their families were shattered, their communities were shattered, and there was also a lot of issues that were happening between people. But the cool thing is Gary being able to prove that you can overcome difficulties and actually be that more refined, sculpted person and do incredible things in the world like he has done.
The memoir emphasizes the power of choices in shaping one's destiny. Can you share how this idea influenced your perspective on your own life?
On my own life, yeah. Well, there's a really significant place in Gary's story that walks through DNA and finding out that his birth father, who he thought his birth father, was not his birth father. And I had a similar situation that was happening live in real time in my own life. I'd been a secret for over 50 years in terms of my birth family. And an author had given me a DNA test. And she said, you know, you're always teaching us to dig deep in our stories. She said, I don't think your story will ever be full and complete until you do this. And she handed me a DNA kit as a thank you gift. And I've just got to tell you, Daniel, that DNA kit terrified me more fully than any of my other experiences that I ever had. It was crazy. It sat on my desk for 2 weeks and I was afraid to get into it and send it off. But it opened up an entire new world. So Gary and I had some things in common, and who I originally thought was my birth father turned out not to be my birth father. And so I was spinning in my own emotional turmoil at the same time as Gary was describing his to me. And I was able to put all of that angst into the book and also, you know, have the resolution of that, because part of um, part of what this whole book was about too is, you know, how do we show up in the world? How do we take responsibility for our own lives? How do we show up as parents and leaders, especially if you didn't have a good one, you know, growing up, especially if you didn't have maybe all the best mentoring that you could have. But Gary did have significant people who showed up in his life, saved his life, sculpted, you know, some beliefs in him and helped him to get on better and better paths. As you said, it comes down to choices. And he was able to recognize at a young age that he did have choices.
Definitely. Very well said, Miss Bridget. Beautifully articulated. Gary's stories is described as a literary symbol of his life's mission to uplift people's spirits. How did this mission come through as the co-author?
As the co-author,
Yes.
well, it was interesting because Gary had come to one of my inspired writers retreats that I hold at this beautiful lake up in the mountains. And he came to be a support to his wife who was writing a book. And she has an extraordinary story too. But as he was vulnerably sharing, I had to just tell him, Gary, like, this is incredible. This book, this movement that you're creating, this ability to change the world through the power of your story is right here in your story. And he'd always felt a little bit of that, but it was like he became on fire and we had the opportunity to be able to do that together. So that was phenomenal. Just, you know, to see it and then to be able to see it all the way to fruition.
Totally phenomenal, Miss Bridget. The reviews mention the book's ability to offer hope to those in dark places. Did you find this to be true? And if so, how?
Oh, it's been phenomenal. You know, we decided not to, you know, we did not put in every detail of abuse that he suffered as a child, but we were honest about the things he had suffered. And not all men are find themselves able to do that. You know, they have this feeling that they have to be strong and that they can't show, you know, any of those vulnerabilities or tender feelings and emotions. But Gary very in a different kind of way, different kind of strength. He decided that he would do this, especially, like I said, at this time of COVID. What's been remarkable are the people who daily and weekly text him, email him, find his number, call him, send him DMs on social media, because they too had suffered something greatly. A lot of men who had suffered abuse and had never told a single soul were able to share with Gary this, you know, helplessness and loss of identity, and then how they were able to overcome and get theirs back, to find hope. And then they found hope in his story, that they didn't have to keep this all inside for the rest of their lives, that there was something greater beyond the secrets. So he's had some really amazing experiences with this book.
Totally amazing. The book is praised for its emotional depth and honesty. Which moments in the narrative felt particularly authentic or raw to you?
Ah, there were many. Like I said, he was deeply vulnerable, but I will tell you, there is a point in the story where Gary has to confront his perpetrator, because he was such a nice guy. But
Mhm.
there came a time when all of this had built up to such a degree, and it came out at a most unexpected time. And he's like beating on a pillow and screaming at the top of his lungs, and he's feeling all this rage. And he's like, this is why people become serial killers. Like, he felt this uncontrollable rage, and then he got it all out. And his wife was very understanding. She provided tools and quiet, and let him be away from their young children at the time. And he was able to be with that emotion and just express it and be able to get it out, so that the next time he met, with this stepbrother, he was able to have a real conversation about the truth of what had happened to him as a child. And that started him on a incredibly healing journey.
Miss Bridget, as a New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, speaker, and trainer, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
My short-term goals involve just assisting people, um, how to write best-selling quality books. And, because a lot of people will put a book out there, but it doesn't mean that it can impact and change the world. And so my short-term goals are to help more people to be able to do that. My long-term goals are to raise more leaders who do that. I have noticed that when someone works on their life story, that they become so familiar with who they are and what they've been through, but they're a witness to the rise on the other side, and they become confident and compassionate. They're able to tackle challenges in themselves and their families and their communities and even the nation and the world in really remarkable ways. And I want more people to be able to experience that. So I'll be training additional authors, how to write like I learned to write, with these true and compelling stories, and also how to change the world with their words.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Bridget, and thank you for your legacy to the world. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be, of course, like you?
The biggest thing I think is, to recognize the power of your own story and to not diminish it. Because if you can be that witness for your own story, then you begin to see the special threads that are involved in other people's stories, because each of us has an extraordinary story. And it's just a matter of timing and, the storytelling and the venue to be able to get it out in a way that will impact and change the world. So don't give up.
Yes. Don't give up, people, and stop procrastinating. If you have the passion to write, write, or ask Miss Bridget for help. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Oh, there's been a number of them. Um, I will tell you, To Kill a Mockingbird was a big one for me when I was
Oh,
younger.
yes, yes.
Yeah, it helped me to know that I wanted to have social impact when I grew older, and I thought I wanted to be an attorney like Atticus. And then I realized, nope, too much paperwork, not enough working with people. So I love the work that I'm doing now, but that one greatly influenced me, as well as The Diary of Anne Frank
Ah,
and Uncle Tom's Cabin. So there were a number of things that influenced me early for the way I view the world. And then as I got older, there were just incredible authors. And I love fiction and nonfiction both. So I think when you really love story, that you start to devour lots of different genres and see what is possible, what is capable. So I'm a big admirer of like 1,500 authors.
No, thank you for that recommendations, Miss Bridget. And do you think sooner or later you will write a book like To Kill the Mockingbird?
I actually do. I have a fictional series that a little at a time I'm working on that I think will affect youth in a really powerful way.
Hmm.
And I feel like I have been blessed to write some of these stories that do have long term impact on people's lives. And I feel like there's another one coming.
Wow, looking forward for that, Miss Bridget. And please do come over and book one-on-one review. And well, let's talk about it and promote to the world. Let's empower those books that make our worlds go round. The memoir ties Gary's personal story to broader themes of compassion and social justice. How did these themes impact you as the co-author?
Mm. I feel like Gary and I had a lot in common in that way already. Um, but I think when you have to go into some of these really deep and vulnerable areas, like every time I have written a book, it has made me look deeper inside at my own situation, my own beliefs, my own upbringing, the stories that I have told myself. And with Gary's, I recognized that there were some areas of my life in which I had played small. Gary, one of his great gifts is to learn from many other people, and he's allowed people to have a dramatic effect on who he's become, just like that. His whole premise to lift the human spirit through sculpture. He discovered that at a retreat. And so, what I learned through Gary was to let my walls down, to allow other people's wisdom, not just through books, but in real life, to allow their wisdom to help me with my goals, to help shape me and mold me into a better person, a better leader, a better businesswoman, a better mom, a better Mimi. So,
Hmm, definitely. Ms. Bridget, the book Prophets support the statue of responsibility. Did learning about these cause enhance your appreciation of the memoir itself?
um, it just made me more passionate, to be honest with you. Just seeing how in our nation and our world we have a tendency to find ways that it's us versus them, to find ways to tear one another apart. And I've also seen how stories can bring us together, how stories can, break down those walls we were just talking about and allow us to connect as humans. And ever since we used to be around campfires and we would share these stories, we learned greater things about ourselves. So I think, what I have been able to take from this as well is just how important these stories are in book form, as well as movies and documentaries for us to be able to have a greater movement. And the Statue of Responsibility, it was fascinating to me because it for me, the knowledge of it came at a time when I saw people tearing each other down. And the symbol of the statue is one person reaching down to lift another. And so there's this grasp. And as Gary says, sometimes we're the hand reaching up, and sometimes we're the hand reaching down to be able to lift another. And I think that's something that we have been losing as a society and a culture, especially at this time when we think of all the ways that we can hurt someone with our words or make ourselves right. That this brings us back to those human elements of what are we here for in the first place? And what do we want to have as our legacy when we leave this planet? Is it sharp words for other people? Is it lack of compassion? Or do we want to have something greater, something that other generations can build upon? That's what incites and inspires me.
Beautifully, beautifully articulated, Miss Bridget. Very well said. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in 5th season, abstract poetry in 2nd season, and my book 101 review in 5th season too, comedy 101 in 2nd season, and my food 101 and 5th season as well, geography 101 in 4th season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in each 3rd season, a movie 101 review and music 101 in 4th season, and science 101 and sex 101 in its 1st season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Bridget, would you recommend Divine Turbulence to others? And if so, who do you think would benefit most from reading it?
Thank you. Hopefully every author loves their book so much that they would recommend everyone to read it, correct?
Definitely. Yes.
But I would also say I highly recommend this book for anyone who sometimes struggles with hope, who has been through some hell and high water and is aching to come out on the other side, and to know that to be able to recognize in someone else's story and their own this magic of human resilience and the ability for us to start over at any time. And also this idea of contribution, that we are greater than anything that has ever happened to us. We are greater than any of the weights that may be pulling us down. We are incredible. And when we come together, we can do so much more to change the world. So anyone who's struggling with hope, this is a book of great hope.
Yes, don't lose hope, people, because hope is always in the corner. Miss Bridget Cook-Burch, New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling author. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your projects, or your books itself?
Yes. So I would just say anyone who's looking to write a book, we have something called Inspired Writer Retreat. I would love to have you come to that. Personally, it's a small group and we work on your story. And the other is just find us on Facebook and Instagram at Your Inspired Story.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Bridget, because if you support her, as I said, more and more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering coaching to come for sure, and empowering advocacy to come. So Miss Bridget, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.